Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to the Chem Lab. In our previous videos, we looked at naming some binary ionic compounds, and we used the term binary because they only had two elements in it. So we would name the metal, we would check for a Roman numeral, and then use "ide" at the end of the anion. In this episode, we are looking at ternary ionic compounds or tertiary ionic compounds, depending on where you're from. And those compounds contain a metal, but more than one other metal on the backside. And so we need to deal with those and learn how to name those. So grab your periodic table and your polyatomic ions chart, and let's get started. If you paid attention in our previous videos, you know that there are four possible main types of ionic compounds. Those contain metal ions and monatomic ions, transition metals and monatomic ions, metal ions and polyatomic ions, and metal ions and transition metals and polyatomic ions. So those are our categories. Today, we are dealing with metal ions and polyatomic ions. We're doing this diagonal on the chart. So we need to know about those polyatomic ions, all right? And if you haven't yet gotten it out or found one, make sure you have a polyatomic ions chart available for you so that you can look up the names of these things. Hopefully you don't have to memorize them. I always tell my students they don't have to memorize them. All right, but here's the instructions. When naming the ions, use the ending "ate" or "ite." That's different from the binary ionic compounds that end in IDE. So we're looking for "ates" or "ites. Use your charts to find the name. Don't guess at it. So go find it. Just find the formula and there should be a name next to it. Ignore the subscripts and just name each ion once. So now we're getting into territory where it gets easy to kind of get carried away. Because when you look at compounds that contain polyatomic ions, there's a lot going on. I see three different elements. I got parentheses. I got a two over there. I got, lots of stuff. And so it's easy for a beginner to say, I'm just going to name everything that's there. Magnesium, nitrogen, oxide, and come up with some crazy name like that. Notice that that's three words. These compounds should only have two words in the name, right? We're going to name the metal and then name everything else with one word. Okay, here we go. So the first one, we're going to name the metal, which is magnesium. Okay. And then I check to see if it needs a Roman numeral. These will not need a Roman numeral because they only have one possible charge. But then I got to name everything else with one word. Okay, so if I see more than two elements left, more than one, I'm going to go find it. So I look at my polyatomic ions chart, and I find that NO3, the grouping NO3 is right there, and it has the name nitrate. So we're going to call it magnesium nitrate. And that takes care of all of that with only one word. So that's what we want. And also, yes, there are two of them, but I don't have to say that there's two of them. I just have to name the two ions. Magnesium and nitrate got together, made a compound. It happens to have a two, great. But we're just naming the two ions that are there. I included the next one because it's pretty common and you're going to see it a lot. And it's this NH4 group. You might look at that as a beginner and say, well, wait a minute, I don't see any metal on there. In fact, I don't even see NH4 anywhere on the periodic table. And that's because NH4 is tricky. If you look at a polyatomic ions chart, it will likely have on there somewhere a little category for the positive polyatomic ions. And guess what? There's usually only one listed. There's not only one out there, but ammonium is so common that it's usually listed NH4 plus. So even though it's not a metal, it has a positive charge, and so it can act as the cation in a ionic compound. And so you might see it over here on the left-hand side. When you see that, you just have to kind of know that it's there and exists. You can name all of that by simply calling it ammonium. Okay? Yes, there are two of them, but don't worry about that. You're just naming the two ions. I have this ion and this group of ion atoms over here, and that's another polyatomic ion. So check your polyatomic ions chart. You will find it under the name carbonate. So we're fulfilling all the rules. We got the endings of 8. We now know that ammonium exists, so keep your eye out for that one. And resist calling it nitrogen, hydrogen, or something like that. Okay, so let's try a couple on your own. Keep your charts out in front of you. Pause the video, see if you can correctly name these last two, and I'll see you back here in a couple seconds. All right, and if you came up with strontium chlorate and lithium acetate, then congratulations. This one's got a lot going on, 4 different elements, but we just simply stick to the rules. Be laser focused about this. Name the metal, name everything else with one word, and that should be able to find it, and it turns out to be acetate. Okay, so that takes care of some polyatomic ions in ionic compounds. If you have any questions, send them to me in the comments, and in the meantime, happy studying and have a great day.